Does Africa really have a problem? Don't forget I said our discussion is on solving African problems. Does Africa really have a problem? And if Africa has a problem, are we solving these challenges within the continent? And yes, Africa has a problem. Are we solving these challenges from a point of view which is African? And I'd also like us to know that solving challenges within the continent requires us being committed to all that we are doing. We have to be passionate and we have to be patriotic in our approach. There's a quote that says that he who wears the shoes knows where it pinches. And over the years, I've observed that most Africans have handed over problem solving to the hands of foreigners. And should we think this approach would yield better results? It is our place as individuals to wake up every morning to the challenges that we encounter as Africans and to look inwards to our inner abilities. I would rather say that Africa doesn't have problems but challenges. It is our place to look at these challenges and see how we could solve them within the continent. My company, Immortal Cosmetic Art, was created some years back when my brother lost some of his fingers. And it changed our mindsets and it affected us as a family and myself as an individual. The surgeons told us that we had one option, which was to purchase these prosthetic flesh covers outside the continent because that was the only place where we could have it at the time. And after waiting for months, for a very long time to have these prosthetic flesh covers given to us, what we had was something seemingly white and off-tone. What I mean by seemingly white, my brother is black, and what we had was a prosthesis which was white-skinned. And this left me to research and to look inwards, being a sculptor, on how I could solve this challenge. And after a long research, with my skill, with my diligence and self-determination, I was able to come up with what we have today as the production of hyper-realistic flesh covers for amputees who are African all over the world. I advise every African to use this approach in solving problems within the continent, to look inward. You may be a physician, whatever you are, you have to use your ability as an African to look at African challenges. I am naturally a reserved individual and I like being myself, and most of the time, one of my hobbies is cooking. And on this very day, I was at the market and a curious-looking guy approached me and he seemed to have observed something on my face and he was staring at me glaringly. And I was uncomfortable with it. I didn't let him land when I asked him, "Guy, how far?" He looked at me and said, "Bros, no bad." He proceeded, "I think I've seen you somewhere on TV, Al Jazeera, CNN, or BBC. You must be John Amanam, the guy who produces human parts." I turned around, I looked left, and I reluctantly said, "Yes, I am, but prosthesis, not human parts." He proceeded by asking, he says, "Guy, what do you do for Nigeria? What do you do for market?" And I was like, "Bros, where should I be? Or where am I supposed to be?" And he answered, "You're supposed to be Yankee now. Canada, UK, any of those countries, making cool cash." And I was disappointed, you know. You see, I became uncomfortable and I replied immediately with a very upsetting tone. I said, "Guy, I'm in Nigeria solving African problems." According to the NCBI, that's USA, we have about 65,000 African-born physicians and about 70,000 African-born physicians who are, medical professionals who have been working outside the country or overseas in developed countries as at 2000, and over 7,600 trained nurses from Nigeria who had relocated as at May this year, that is 2022. And I am of this belief that contrary to what we know about the slave trade and the whole trade and African slave trade history, that slave trade was beyond just sales of humans and exchange of some kind of commodities. It had to do with skill, talented people, and people who were physically fit, But today we don't have slave markets anymore. We don't have any slave markets in our societies, but Africans willingly give up themselves for profits. And we have been systematically designed or programmed to believe that nothing good can grow, survive, or remain in the continent. An average Nigerian or African thinks that there is no need staying in Africa. You can't make it in Africa. His dream is to be a citizen of the UK, one of those countries where he feels their economy, their currency would better his life. And I beg to differ. Creative people from the continent, once they discover they are progressing or they've made little progress, they feel like leaving or relocating. And I would like to ask, how many French citizens have you seen becoming Ghanaians? How many Chinese Togolese do you have? How many German Zimbabweans do you have? Africans keep seeking to become what they are not. If only Africans are given the opportunity, or creatives from the continent are able, given an enabling environment, this wouldn't have been the case. And I advise that we work as a people to see how we could encourage creatives who are from the continent by giving them the support they require. How long, I say, would inventors from the continent, innovators from the continent, leave, bid her farewell, and never return? The continent is suffering or going through what we have today because the creatives who would have remained in the continent are citizens of other continents, citizens of other countries, developing and adding value to their economies, while the continent is left to suffer. The world sees us as a means to achieve our goals. And our continent is neglected and painted primitive, while we daily and consciously present ourselves as immigrants, as helpless people, homeless and hungry refugees. Why won't the world see us the way we are? If you check around the world, wherever you see a black man, you see people talking about oppression and the rest of them, because we deliberately and consistently present ourselves as immigrants, homeless, hungry, refugees. We have refused to sit back in our lands to fix it. Everyone deserves to be where they are encouraged, supported, and empowered. And I don't have the right to blame any creative here in Africa for not remaining in their continent, because creatives in other continents are supported and retained in their countries to develop their ideas, while you find creatives from our continent left to starve with their ideas, and they definitely need to leave. So I have no right to blame anyone for leaving the continent or leaving his or her country. But we have to think while we are living. And this leaves me to ask some questions like, do we really need to be citizens of UK, Canada, or one of these countries to be able to think or create? Must we relocate to Asia or one of these countries to be able to be outstanding? It's one of those questions I would like you to ask yourself. You don't need to be citizens of foreign lands. We just need to be conscious, productive, and wake up to the everyday challenges facing the African society and create a hub where African creatives are empowered and encouraged. Africans must think for Africa. Africans must work for Africa. Africans must live for Africa. Sometimes I feel excited and I feel fulfilled when I realize I have achieved remarkable success within my community. I've achieved remarkable success because, I call it success because I have been able to help my people. I've been able to meet a need of my people first. I've been able to achieve that by sitting back in my country and meeting my people's need. You see, we've met over 1,000, we've circulated over 1,000 prosthetic flesh covers to Africans all over the world, just from the city of Uyo. And this makes me to realize we don't need to relocate to be impactful to the world. We can be Africans, solving African problems in Africa and reaching the world, whether with our agents or whatever, but within Africa. So we have to remain and impact our skill, our knowledge within the continent in which we were born. So we have a whole lot going on, and the media is part of this. We need a constant and conscious media to remind the African child that civilization started in Africa, and there is a need to work on our self-esteem, not just as a superior race, but as sufficient individuals. We need the media to talk about the numerous achievements of several Africans through their innovations in different fields, like medicine and the rest of them. You talk about Philip Amegala of Africa, which is responsible for the fastest computer. You talk about Innocent Motors, which is here in Africa, produced by an African. What of Professor Mushudu Shifilaro of South Africa, who is responsible for the first successful middle ear transplants in the world? These are Africans, and the list goes on and on. Look, the way we present ourselves determine what the world sees us, and the children we want, the people we want our children to become. We need to start rebranding ourselves by looking at the media and our educational system. Like Burna Boy would say, he says that the African schooling system has been designed to educate our children on the history of others and not our own history. And until this is challenged and changed, we are far from the solutions we seek. It is high time African creatives are brought together, encouraged, and discouraged from fleeing from the continent. Because Africa needs us, and we need Africa. We are not mistakes becoming Africa. There is no mistake or there is no coincidence that we are Africans. So the continent needs to profit from our skill first before any other continent. I would like to borrow from the lyrics of a Nigerian musician called Asa. And she says, there is fire on the mountain, and one day the river will overflow, and there will be no place for us to go. And we'll sit back and think and regret that we would have sat back to fix up this fire or to quench the fire. One day the river would overflow. Dear Africans, let's sit back, fix our land. Africa needs us, and we need Africa. Thank you for having me.